Learn how to crochet a winter or Christmas crochet bag with this Snowflake Granny Square Bag crochet pattern. In this tutorial, I'll show you step by step how to make the snowflake squares, join them together, and create a beautiful large crochet tote bag that's perfect for holiday shopping or for gifting. Even if this is your first ever Granny Square bag, you'll be able to easily follow along and crochet this beautiful bag from start to finish. The written pattern is available to view for free on my website, and there's a link to that free pattern in the description below this video. This stunning snowflake crochet bag is part of my snowflake collection, which also includes my snowflake coasters, as well as my snowflake granny square blanket and my snowflake Christmas tree ornament. If you'd like to crochet more snowflake patterns, there are links to all of those right below this video. For this pattern, you can use any size 4 medium weight yarn. For a hook size, use an H hook for the entire pattern. We are going to start by making the squares. We will be making 13 squares in total, and all squares are made the same way. We are going to start by using color A. As seen in these photos, I used white yarn for color A. However, for this video tutorial, I'm going to use this blue yarn for color A, just so it's easier for you to see what I'm doing. With our color A, we're going to start by making a magic circle. This is how I make a magic circle. I have another video showing how to do this step by step slowly that I'll link to in the description below this video. To start round 1, we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to complete the following instructions a total of 7 times. The first step is to make a half double crochet stitch, working into the magic circle, yarn over, insert your hook into the magic circle, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull yarn through all 3 loops. And there's our first half double crochet stitch. The next step is to chain 1. We are going to complete those steps a total of 7 times. We've now done it once. Working into the magic circle, half double crochet, and chain 1. We've now completed those steps twice. You go ahead and complete them a total of 7 times. You should now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 half double crochet stitches. And after each of those half double crochet stitches, a chain 1. Now we're going to pull the end of the magic circle tight to close. And to join the round, we are going to slip stitch into the space between the 3 chains we made at the start and our first half double crochet stitch. This is the chain 3 space. Working into this chain 3 space, insert your hook and slip stitch to join. To start round 2, we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. We are not going to turn. We are going to work into the first or the same chain 3 space that we just slip stitched into. Into this chain 3 space, we are going to double crochet. Yarn over, insert your hook into the chain 3 space, yarn over, pull up a loop. Yarn over, bring the yarn through the first 2 loops. Yarn over, bring the yarn through the remaining 2 loops. And there's our double crochet stitch. For the rest of the round, we're going to be repeating the following instructions. We are going to work into the next chain 1 space. This is a space underneath where we made a chain 1 in between half double crochet stitches. This is our first of 7 chain 1 spaces that we'll be working into. We're not working into tops of stitches. We're going right underneath the chain 1 in between the half double crochet stitches And into this space, we're going to do the following. In the chain one space, we are going to double crochet, chain one, and still working in the same chain one space, make another double crochet stitch. And these are the steps we're going to be repeating all the way around. We've just worked in our first of 7 chain one spaces, working in the next chain one space, into this space, double crochet, chain one, and double crochet in the same space. You go ahead and repeat those steps all the way around. I'm almost finished working all the way around. I've just finished working in the 6th chain one space. I have one last chain one space to work into. The last chain one space is between the last half double crochet stitch made in the previous round and the starting chain 3 from the previous round, and it's underneath that last chain 1 that we made before joining. Working right into this last chain 1 space, we complete the same steps. Double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet in the same space. At the end of this round, you should have 15 double crochet stitches. Here was our first, and then we made 2 in each chain 1 space. To join, we are going to slip stitch into the space between our 3 starting chains and our first double crochet stitch. Into this chain 3 space, we're going to slip stitch to join. To start round 3, we're going to chain 2. 1, 2. We're going to start by working into the chain 3 space. This is the space that we just slip stitched into. Into this chain 3 space, we are going to double crochet, insert your hook into the chain 3 space, and double crochet. Now we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and still working into the chain 3 space, we're going to make 2 double crochet stitches. There's 1. And there's 2. Now we're going to begin the repeat portion of the round. In the next chain 1 space, the space between the double crochet stitches made in the same space in the previous round under that chain 1, and just to make sure you're working the right space, it's not between these double crochet stitches. We are going to work into the chain 1 space, which is under the chain 1, right here. Into this chain 1 space, make 2 double crochet stitches. There's 1. In the same space, make another. There's 2. Now we're going to chain 2. And in the same space, we're going to make 2 more double crochet stitches. There's 1. Make another. And there's 2. These are the steps we're going to be repeating all the way around, working into the next chain 1 space, into this space, make 2 double crochet stitches. There's 2, chain 2, and in the same space, make 2 more. We've just worked in the first 2 chain 1 spaces. You go ahead and work in the remaining 5 chain 1 spaces. I'm almost finished working all the way around. I've worked in 6 chain 1 spaces so far. I have one last chain 1 space to work into. Nothing special happens, but let's finish the round together. Make 2 double crochet stitches, chain 2, and in the same space make 2 more double crochet stitches. To finish the round, we're going to slip stitch in the top of the first double crochet stitch that we made in this round, working under the top 2 loops of this first double crochet stitch. Working the top of this first stitch, slip stitch to join. At the end of this round, you should have 31 double crochet stitches. We also now have 8 chain 2 spaces. The chain 2 that we made at the very beginning of the round does not create a chain 2 space. Our first chain 2 space that we've made is right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. To start round 4, the first thing we're going to do is slip stitch into the first chain 2 space. Working into this first chain 2 space, slip stitch. Now we're going to chain 2, and we're going to continue working in this first or the same chain 2 space. In this first chain 2 space, we're going to make 2 double crochet stitches. There's 1, and there's 2. Now we're going to chain 2, and we're going to keep working in this chain 2 space. And we're going to make 3 double crochet stitches all in the same space. There's 1, 2, and 3. Now we're going to begin the repeat portion of the round. And in this round, we're going to be working into the chain 2 spaces. In the next chain 2 space, we are going to make 3 double crochet stitches. 1, 2, and 3. Now chain 2, and in the same space, make 3 more double crochet stitches. There's 1, 2, and 3. These are the steps you're going to be repeating in each chain 2 space all the way around. Let's do one more together. Working in the next chain 2 space, we are going to make our 3 double crochet stitches. There's 3. Now chain 2 and make 3 more double crochet stitches. You go ahead and repeat those steps in the remaining 5 chain 2 spaces. I'm almost finished working all the way around. I've worked in 7 chain 2 spaces so far. I have one last chain 2 space to work into. Nothing special happens. You still make 3 double crochet stitches, then chain 2 and make 3 more double crochet stitches all in the same space. To finish the round, we're going to slip stitch into the top of the first double crochet stitch that we made in the round to join. Working the top of this first double crochet stitch, slip stitch to join. For an easy way to count our stitches, we made 6 double crochet stitches in 7 chain 2 spaces. 6 times 7 is 42, and in the first chain 2 space we made 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 double crochet stitches, so we have a total of 47 double crochet stitches completed at the end of this round. We also have a total of 8 chain 2 spaces. Now we're going to fasten off color A, simply meaning to cut the yarn that's attached to your skein. Pull the end through the loop that was on your hook and pull tight. We are now going to start round 5. The first thing we're going to do is attach color B. For all my squares, I used blue yarn for color B. However, for this video tutorial, I'm going to use this green color from my color B, just so it's easy for you to see what I'm doing. To attach your color B, insert your hook into the first chain 2 space. Here's where we just slip stitched to joined, and then we fastened off our color A. Here is the first chain 2 space. This is the space under the 2 chains, and we're going to insert our hook right here. Insert your hook into the first chain 2 space. Place your color B on your hook and pull it through the space. A quick note that you're going to continue using color B for the rest of the square. Now we're going to chain 1. We are going to go right into the repeat portion of the round. The repeat starts by making a single crochet in the chain 2 space. The first time we do this, this is the same chain 2 space that we just attached color B to. In this chain 2 space, single crochet. Next, we are going to work in between the next 2 stitches, inserting our hook in between the posts of these stitches, right here. We're not working into tops of stitches, we're working in between these stitches. We're going to insert our hook in between these 2 stitches and half double crochet. Next, we are going to insert our hook in between the next 2 stitches. Once again, not working into tops of stitches, in between these stitches, we are going to double crochet. Now we're going to work into the space between clusters. When I say cluster, I mean a group of 3 double crochet stitches. And here's the space in between these 3 double crochet stitches and these 3 double crochet stitches. We are going to work in this space, and we are going to make a triple crochet stitch into this space. Some people call them treble crochet stitches. I call them triple, and here's how to make one. Yarn over twice. Insert your hook into this space between the clusters. Yarn over, pull up a loop, 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull the yarn through the first 2 loops. 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull the yarn through the first 2 loops. 2 loops left. Yarn over and pull the yarn through the 2 remaining loops. There's our triple crochet stitch. Next, we're going to work in between the next 2 stitches, inserting our hook in between the posts of these stitches. And in between the next 2 stitches, we are going to double crochet. Next, we're going to work in between the next 2 stitches. Insert your hook between the posts of the next 2 stitches and double crochet. Now we're going to work into the chain 2 space. We're going to insert our hook right into the space. And into this chain 2 space, we're going to do a number of things. First thing we're going to do is make 2 double crochet stitches. There's one. Let's make another. Now we have 2 double crochet stitches. Now we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and still working into the same chain 2 space, make 2 more double crochet stitches. There's one. And there's 2. Continuing along with our repeat, we're going to work in between the next 2 stitches. Inserting our hook in between the next 2 stitches, we are going to double crochet. Now we're going to work in between the next 2 stitches. In between these 2 stitches, once again, we're going to double crochet. Now we're going to work into the space between clusters. Into this space, we are going to triple crochet. Now we're going to work in between the next 2 stitches. In between the next 2 stitches, we are going to double crochet. And the last step in the repeat is to work in between the next 2 stitches. Working in between the next 2 stitches, half double crochet. These are the steps we're going to repeat all the way around. Let's do it one more time together. Working in the chain 2 space, single crochet. Working in between the next 2 stitches, half double crochet. Working in between the next 2 stitches, double crochet. Working in the space between clusters, triple crochet. Working in between the next 2 stitches, double crochet. Working in between the next 2 stitches, double crochet. Working into the chain 2 space, make 2 double crochet stitches. There's 2. Chain 2, 1, 2, and still in the same chain 2 space, make 2 more double crochet stitches, and there's 2. Working in between the next 2 stitches, double crochet. working in between the next 2 stitches, double crochet. Working in the space between clusters, we are going to triple crochet. Working in between the next 2 stitches, double crochet. And the last step is to work between the next 2 stitches and half double crochet. You go ahead and repeat those steps all the way around. I'm almost finished working all the way around. Here was my final triple crochet stitch, and I have 2 more stitches to make. I still need to make a double crochet stitch and then a half double crochet stitch to finish the repeat. I wanted to point out that right here is the starting chain 2 that we made at the start of round 4. And in this round, we're treating this starting chain 2 just like a normal double crochet stitch. As you can see, I still made a triple crochet in the space between these clusters. And when I go to work in between the next 2 stitches, I'm still making my double crochet stitch like I normally would in between 2 stitches. I'll show you quickly how I'm finishing the round. In between the next 2 stitches, double crochet, and in between the next 2 stitches, half double crochet. At the end of this round, you should have a total of 60 stitches. That's not counting any chains. Chain 1 we made at the beginning, not counting that, not counting these chain 2s, just counting all the stitches. You also have 4 chain 2 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. To finish the round, we're going to work into the top of the first single crochet stitch that we made in the round. And into the top of this first single crochet stitch, we are going to slip stitch to join. It's absolutely okay if your work is looking slightly misshapen after this round. After the next round, the final round of the square, it will become more square. It just looks a little odd after this round, and that's absolutely okay. It's also okay for the place where you attached color B to be very loose. It will tighten up once you weave in your loose ends. To start round 6, we're going to chain 2, 1, 2. We are going to double crochet in the first 8 stitches. Our first stitch that we're going to work into is the very first stitch. This is the same stitch we just slip stitched into, the same stitch that's attached to this chain 2. In this first stitch, we are going to double crochet. There's our first of 8. In the next stitch, make our second of 8. In the next stitch, make our third of 8. Then fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and 8. Next, we're going to be working into the chain 2 space. Before we get to what we're going to actually be doing in this chain 2 space, after we work in the chain 2 space, we are going to be skipping the next stitch. Here's the next stitch after the chain 2 space. We are not going to be working into this stitch. After working in the chain 2 space, this stitch gets covered. It's going to be harder to see this stitch, so I wanted to point out that this is the stitch we're going to be skipping after working into the chain 2 space. Into this chain 2 space, the first thing we're going to do is make 3 double crochet stitches. There's 1, 2, and 3. Now we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and still in the same space, make 3 double crochet stitches. There's 1, 2, and 3. Now we're going to begin the repeat portion of the round. The first step in our repeat is to skip the next stitch. As I mentioned, we're going to skip this stitch and not work into the top of it. So you can see here the top of this stitch is now a bit covered by after working in the chain 2 space. This is the stitch we are skipping. We are going to double crochet in the next 14 stitches, starting with the stitch after the stitch we skip. So starting here is our first of 14 double crochet stitches. Skipping the next stitch, in the next stitch, make our first of 14, and continue making double crochet stitches in the next 14 stitches, and then come back to the video. I've just made 14 double crochet stitches. Now we're going to work into the chain 2 space, and we're going to do the exact same thing we did when we worked into the first chain 2 space. Into this chain 2 space, we are going to make 3 double crochet stitches. There's 3. Now chain 2, 1, 2, and into the same chain 2 space, make 3 more double crochet stitches. There's 3. These are the steps that we are going to complete a total of 3 times. We've now completed these steps once, and we need to complete them a total of 3 times. So we need to repeat these steps 2 more times. As you go do that, remember that the first step is to skip the next stitch. You're not working in to the very next stitch. You start making your 14 double crochet stitches in the next stitch. You go ahead and complete these steps a total of 3 times, or 2 more times than what we just did, and then come back to the video. I've now completed these steps 3 times. Once again, we are going to skip the next stitch. We are not working into the top of the next stitch. We are going to be working into the next stitch, and we are going to double crochet in the last 6 stitches. Skipping the next stitch, in the next stitch, make our first of 6, and double crochet in the last 6 stitches. Here's my last stitch. At the end of this round, you should have 80 stitches. That's not counting the starting chain 2 or any of the chain 2s made in the corners. To finish the round, we're going to work into the top of the first double crochet stitch that we made in this round. Working in the top of this first stitch, we are going to slip stitch to join. We can now fasten off our yarn, meaning to remove our hook, cut the yarn that's attached to your skein, and pull the end through the loop that was on your hook, and pull tight. Now with your yarn needle, weave in all your loose ends. And now you have a new snowflake square. We have now made one square. You go ahead and repeat these instructions until you have a total of 13 squares. Before we get to joining, now is the time when you can block your squares. Blocking can help correct any curling and help shape your work. To block your finished squares, pin them on blocking boards with rust-proof pins, or use a granny square blocking board, spray them with water, and leave them to dry. For the next part of the video tutorial, you will see a different granny square in the video. I'm reusing some footage from my flower granny square bag pattern, but the instructions are exactly the same. Just ignore the hook and the square shown in the video and follow along, as it's exactly what you need to do for this snowflake bag. A quick note that your bag is going to look the same on the front and the back. This pattern frequently references the front of the bag and the back of the bag to make the instructions easier to follow. Now we're going to assemble the squares. We're going to start with the front of the bag. We are going to lay out 5 squares, just like this, with the wrong sides, the back of the square facing up. So this is the front, this is the back. So this is the front, this is the back, this is the wrong side. We want 5 squares in this position, all with the wrong sides facing up. And this is going to be the front of our bag. So the outside of the squares will be on the front. We want to ensure there are no joining slip stitches across the top. The joining slip stitch is the slip stitch that joined the final round of the square. You can see there's a little bump from that slip stitch, and we do not want that bump to be across the top. For the top 2 squares, we need to ensure that that bump is facing towards the bottom. Other than that, for all other squares, it doesn't matter which direction the tops or bottoms and sides are pointing towards. Next, add squares for the sides. So put a square for this side and put a square for this side, ensuring the backs or wrong sides are facing up. And lastly, add a square for the bottom. Once again, the wrong side or back should be facing up. Now we're going to secure the squares, and you can use stitch markers or any yarn or string. So I'm just going to use scrap yarn here. And for this middle square, we're going to connect all the squares that are attached to that middle square by putting your stitch marker or scrap yarn through the chain 2 spaces, just to hold everything together, which is going to make it easier when we join the squares. You can use a yarn needle or your fingers and just put the stitch markers or the yarn through all the chain 2 spaces. It does not need to be pretty. This is just to help us keep all the squares together and remember the order of the squares. So as you can see here, I've just connected all the squares, and I'm going to repeat this for this group, and this group. Next, we're going to fold the sides and bottom squares in half. So take this first side square and fold it in half. Now take the other side square and fold it in half. And finally, take the bottom square and fold it in half. Next, we're going to lay out the 5 squares for the back of the bag. And this time, we're going to place the squares with the right side or fronts of the squares facing up. So the wrong side of the back of the square is facing down, and it's going right on top of the squares for the front. So here's the right side, and I'm placing it on top. For the 3 squares that I just placed, doesn't matter which directions the tops or bottoms are pointing towards. But for the top 2 squares, once again, we want to ensure that the joining slip stitches are not across the top. For the top 2 squares only, point the joining slip stitches towards the bottom. So we'll be securing this group of squares, this group, and this group. I've just secured all the squares on the back. If you still find that the squares are going all over the place as you join, you could also secure these corners here, which would really help. Just to ensure all my squares stay secure for this video, I've also held together all the other corners. So this is the back of our bag. We're now going to flip over the bag so that the front of the bag is facing us. Now put a stitch marker in the top left square's chain 2 space, just so you can know exactly which side is the front. We're now going to learn how to join the squares. To join the squares for this Snowflake Granny Square Bag, use color A, I used white yarn, and continue using an H hook. We're now ready to join our squares, but the first 2 squares we're going to join are the squares on the back. So let's flip the bag over so the back of the bag is now facing us. As you will see in the written instructions, I've labeled each square with a letter. As per the legend for the back of the bag, this is square F and this is square H. And we're going to start joining right here and join these 2 squares together. To make it easier to work into, I'm going to rotate the bag so that I can easily work in to square F and square H. Before we get started joining the actual bag, I thought it'd be helpful to show you how to make flat slip stitches, which is how we're going to join the squares, on squares of 2 different colors and with a different joining color so you can really clearly see what I'm doing. The first thing we'll do is make a slip knot. Place that slip knot on your hook and pull tight. We're always going to be joining 2 squares at once. Each square has 2 chain stitches in the bottom corner, then the same number of stitches all the way up the side, and 2 chain stitches at the top. Same with the square on your left. 2 chain stitches, same number of stitches, and 2 chain stitches at the top. We're always going to be working into the outer loops of all the stitches. The outer loops are the loops that are furthest away from the inside of the square. So these loops here are all the inner loops, and we're never going to work into those. On the square on your left, the outer loops, once again, are the loops furthest away from the inside of the square. So when we join the squares together, we'll always insert our hook into the outer loop of the square on our right and the outer loop of the square on our left. When joining squares in columns, or when we join the bottom squares, we're always going to work into the second of 2 chain stitches here at the bottom. Then we'll be working into the corresponding stitches all the way up, which means we'll be working into the first stitch on the right square and the first stitch on the left square, all the way up until the second 2 chain stitches. When we get to the top, we'll only be working in the first of 2 chain stitches. I'll explain more as we start joining. We have our slip knot on our hook, and I'm going to move the working yarn in between my 2 squares. I'm going to pick up the square on my right and insert my hook into that second chain into the outer loop only from right to left so that my hook comes out in between the 2 squares. Now I'm going to insert my hook into the outer loop of the second chain on the square on my left, but I'm going to insert my hook from left to right so that my hook comes out in between the 2 squares. I now have 3 loops on my hook. I'm going to ensure that my working yarn is always under those 3 loops. Now I'm going to pick up that working yarn, yarn over, and pull the working yarn through all 3 loops. And now we have our first flat slip stitch completed. Now we're going to work into the corresponding stitches all the way up. Here's the first stitch on the square on our right, and here's the top, and here's the outer loop that we're going to be working into. Insert our hook into the outer loop. Now we're going to work into the first stitch on the square on our left, into the top and into the outer loop of that first stitch. Ensure our working yarn is under our loops, yarn over, and pull it through all 3 loops on our hook. There's our second flat slip stitch now made. Now this is very, very important. You don't want to make your stitches too tight. It will pull on your work if the stitches are too tight. If you find you're making these slip stitches very tightly, I would suggest going up a full hook size. It's that important that we keep these slip stitches very loose. Now we're going to work into the second stitch of the right square, inserting our hook to the outer loop of that second stitch on the right square, and inserting our hook into the top of the second stitch here, outer loop of the corresponding stitch. As you join your squares, at one point you're going to come across the joining slip stitch. Whenever you come across this joining slip stitch, you are going to skip over it. Don't try to work into it. You are going to just pretend like it doesn't exist. When you see this little bump here, just skip right over it. Here's the stitch after, here's the stitch before, but you won't work into this joining slip stitch. So we're going to continue making flat slip stitches into the corresponding stitches all the way up the sides of the 2 squares. So I've made my flat slip stitches into corresponding stitches all the way up. I have one more stitch to work into before I get to the 2 chains at the tops of the squares. So you can see here, here's my last stitch. I'm going to work into the outer loop of this last stitch and into the outer loop of the last stitch on the other square. When we get to the 2 chain stitches at the tops, we're only going to work into the first of 2. So there's the first of 2, first of 2. We're not going to work into the second of 2 chain stitches at the top. And into the outer loop of the other first chain, make our last slip stitch of these 2 squares. Now let's apply this technique to our actual bag. So at the back of the bag facing us, we're going to join squares F and square H. And we're going to start right here and join all the squares in column 1 all the way down the back. So I'm going to start by making a slip knot, placing the loop on my hook and pulling tight. Now I'm going to remove my strand of yarn that's holding this group of squares together. I'm moving my working yarn in between the squares. Starting with square F, we're going to start by working into the second chain into the outer loop. And on square H here, we're going to work into the second chain into the outer loop. Inserting my hook into that outer loop and into the outer loop of square H, yarn over and pull that yarn through all 3 loops on our hook. Now I'm going to work into each corresponding stitch all the way up. I'm now going to reattach the strand of yarn that I just cut to keep my squares secure. And we only have to keep replacing them until the joining actually holds all the squares in place. I'm nearing the 2 top chain stitches, and I have one last stitch to work into before the chains. So this is the top of this stitch here. And now I'm going to work into the outer loop of that first chain on the right square and the first chain on the left square. Now we're ready to join the next 2 squares, which is square L and square I. Nothing special really happens, but I thought it'd be easier to show you with multicolored squares and a different color joining line so you can clearly see what I'm doing. We're going to start with the square on our right. This one's folded in half, but that doesn't matter. We're still going to do the exact same thing. We're going to work into the second chain, into the outer loop, and then work into the corresponding stitches all the way up. And we're going to insert our hook into the second chain of the square on our left, into the outer loop of this second chain right here, and then into the corresponding stitches all the way up. So I haven't fastened off. I'm still using the same strand of yarn. I'm going to insert my hook into the second chain and insert my hook into the outer loop of the second chain, the square on my left. Sure, my working yarn is under those 3 loops, and especially for this first stitch, just make sure everything is nice and tight, but not too tight. And then yarn over and pull that yarn through all 3 loops on your hook. And now work into the corresponding stitches all the way up. So now let's do this on the bag. We're going to work into the second chain to the outer loop and the second chain into the outer loop. Oh, I'm sorry, my hand was covering that. This is the second chain. Here's the first chain, here's the second chain, and we're going to insert our hook into the outer loop of this second chain right here. So working into the outer loop of the right square and the outer loop of the left square. Make sure everything's nice and tight, but not too tight, and yarn over and pull that yarn through. And now simply resume making flat slip stitches in each corresponding stitch. I'm nearing the top here. We're going to continue joining the corresponding stitches. So here I have 1 stitch left before the chains. And then I have my 2 chains here, and we're only going to work into the first of 2. There's 1, and there's the first of 2 on the other square. At this point, we are not going to fasten off. We are going to rotate our bag so that the front of our bag is facing us, and we're going to continue working along this column, but on the front of the bag. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to flip my work over. And now I'm going to continue along, joining square L and square E. You might be a little confused because normally we join 2 new squares. So whenever we join 2 new squares, we always work into the second of 2 chain stitches. Well, on this folded square here, we've already worked into it, but nothing changes. We're still working into the second chain. So we'll start by working into the second chain of the square on our right and then work into the corresponding stitches. And we'll start by working into the second chain of the square on our left. So continuing right where we left off with the folded square here, work into the outer loop, and then of this new square here, work into the second chain only, outer loop, and make a flat slip stitch. And now go back to making flat slip stitches all the way until the next two chains. I am now at the chains, and we're only going to work into the first of two chain stitches at the top as usual. And now we're going to join square B and C. So inserting our hook into the second chain to the outer loop of square B, the second chain of the outer loop of square C. Just make sure everything's nice and tight. Yarn over and pull that yarn through all three loops. It's okay if you need to help it along a little bit. And then resume making flat slip stitches into the corresponding stitches all the way up. And I'm going to finish joining squares B and C by working into the first of two chain stitches. Joining B and C were the last two squares in the column, so now we're going to remove our hook and fasten off, leaving about an 8-inch tail. And pull that tail through the loop that was on your hook. Now we're ready to start column 2. As we can see here, we're looking at the front of the bag. So we start column 2 on the back of our bag. So let's flip our bag over. Column 2 starts by joining squares G and K. So let's rotate our work so that we can start right here for column 2. So we're going to attach our yarn right here and work all the way down. The first thing we're going to do is make a slip knot. And we're going to be doing the exact same thing that we did for column 1. We'll start by working into the second chain of the right square and the second chain on the left square. And then work into each corresponding stitch until the next two chains. When you get to the two chain stitches, always just work in the first of two chain stitches. And then join the next two squares by working into the second chain and then into each corresponding stitch. I am almost finished joining squares H and J, and now I'm going to work into the first chain only of these two squares. And now I'm going to join square I and square M, working into the second chain and the second chain. Now working into the corresponding stitches. I'm now at the next two chains, so I'm going to work into the first of two chains. And now I'm not going to fasten off. We are going to flip our bag over and continue working on column 2 all the way up. So we are now joining square E and square M. For square E, we're going to find that second chain and work into the outer loop. And we're going to work into the second chain of square M, but since we've already worked into it, we're just going to continue along, but this is still technically the second chain. Just continue where you left off. And now work into the corresponding stitches. To finish joining squares E and M, work into the first chain only. Now we're going to join squares C and D by working into the second chain of both squares. And then working into the corresponding stitches. Now we're going to finish joining squares C and D by working into the first chain. And now we're going to join squares A and K. And we'll start by working into the second chain. And then resume working into the corresponding stitches. I am almost finished joining these last two squares. The last step is to work into the first chain only of both squares. Now we're going to fasten off, leaving about an 8-inch tail, and pull that tail through the loop that was on your hook. Next, we're going to join the bottoms, and we want to ensure that the front of our bag, so we can tell here this is the front of our bag, we want that to be facing us. We're going to start with this first bottom, and we're going to be starting here and joining this square and the square underneath it, starting here and ending here. So we'll start by making a slip knot, placing it on our hook. We want square D, which is on the front, to be on our right hand side, and square J, which is on the back, to be on our left. So you can position this however you'd like, but we want these two squares to be joined like this. So starting with square D, which is on the front of our bag, insert your hook into the second chain, and then for square J, which is on the back, work into the second chain as well. Making sure your working yarn is under. And now work into the corresponding stitches of both squares. When you're back at your 2 chains, only work into the first of 2 chains to finish joining these 2 squares. Now we're going to fasten off and pull the tail through the loop that was on your hook. Now we're going to do the same thing for the other bottom squares. We're going to be joining square E, which is on the front of your bag, and square I, which is on the back of your bag. And we're going to start right here and end right here. Just make sure that the front of your bag is facing up. I'm going to rotate my bag so it's easier to work into, and we're going to be joining our yarn right here. We will start by making a slip knot and placing it on our hook and pulling tight. We're going to start by working into square E, which is the square on our right and on the front of the bag, and we're going to be working into the second chain here. You can see that the first chain has already been worked into. So we're going to work into the second chain, and on the square from the back, which is square I, we're going to work into the second chain, which is again the one that's not been worked into, working into the outer loop of this second chain. So working into the outer loop of the second chain and working into the second chain on the back square. And now work into each corresponding stitch. As you approach the end of these 2 squares, it can get a little tricky to see. So I thought I'd point out I've got one last stitch to work into. It's the top of this stitch here. So I'll work into the outer loop, and then right after that is the first chain. And we won't be working into the second chain, which is the one that's already been worked into. On the back square, here's the last stitch. Working into the outer loop, and then there's the first chain, working into the outer loop of that chain. It can get a little awkward at this point. Take your time. Lastly, we will work into the first chain only of square E, which is the square on the front, and then work into the first chain only of square I, which is the square on the back. Then fasten off. And that completes the columns and the bottoms. Now we're going to start joining rows. To start joining rows, we're going to start with squares along the back. As you can see here, the front of our bag is facing us, so we're going to flip it over. We're going to start by joining square G and square F. So we're going to attach our yarn right here. I'm going to rotate my bag so it's easier to work into, and I'm going to remove this strand of yarn here. And from now on, anytime you remove a stitch marker or a strand of yarn, you don't need to replace it because the join line should now hold everything in place. So we're going to attach our yarn here, and we're going to be working all the way down. We're going to start by making a slip knot and placing it on our hook. We're going to start by working into square H into the second chain. The second chain is right here. The first chain has already been worked into. So we're going to work into the second chain of square H, and then we'll work into the second chain of square G. So working in the second chain of square H on our right, and the second chain of square G on our left. And now work into the corresponding stitches until the next two chains. We're nearing our first intersection, and I wanted to show you using the multicolored squares exactly what happens. I've just finished making my last flat slip stitch in the corresponding stitches, and I'm now at the place where there's two chains. So we are going to work into this first chain here, the one that has not been worked in, into the outer loop, just like we normally do. So working into this first chain, the unworked chain, just like we normally do, working into the outer loops. We make our flat slip stitch. Now there's the second chain that has already been worked into, but we're going to skip over that. We're going to also skip over this join line. We are not going to work into any of the stitches that were made when we joined the columns. Now we're going to join the next two squares. We're going to be working over the column, and we are going to work into the first of two chains. This first chain has already been worked into, but we're still going to insert our hook into the outer loop of this first chain on both squares and make our first flat slip stitch by working into the first of two chains. So skipping over the second chain and the join line, working into the first chain of the next square on your right into the outer loop, even though it's going to be tight, and then working into the outer loop of the first chain on the left square and making our flat slip stitch. So our row is going to go over our column. Next, we're going to work into the second chain into the outer loop, and this is the chain that has not been worked in. On this square here, here's the second chain, working into the outer loop like we normally do. These chain stitches can get small. Take your time and still work into them, working into the second chain and into the second chain. And that's how we work over the column. Now we resume working into the corresponding stitches. Now let's do this on the actual bag. Here's the first chain, working into the outer loop of that first chain, the unworked chain. These can be tight and a little bit awkward to work into. We are not going to work into the second chain on these squares. We're going to jump over the column, not work into it, and we are going to work into the first chain right here into the outer loop on the right square. And find that first chain on the left square, outer loop, even though it's already been worked into, making sure your working yarn is under those loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull that yarn through all 3 loops. Now we're going to work into the second chain, which has become quite small compared to the next stitch, but still we're going to work into it. And here's the second chain on the left square. Working into the outer loop and the outer loop of that second chain. And now we can resume working into the corresponding stitches. I'm now at the chain stitches for squares J and K, and we're only going to work into the first chain on both squares. Now we're going to flip the bag over. And now we're going to continue row 1 all the way up the front. We're now going to join squares D and K. For square D, we're going to work into the second chain. This is the chain that has not been worked into yet. So working into the outer loop of that second chain. And then for square K on our left, we're going to continue working. We're going to work into the second chain of square K. And now resume working into the corresponding stitches. I'm now at the chain stitches of squares D and K, and we're going to work into the first chain only of these 2 squares. We're not going to work into the second chain, and we're going to skip the column. Next, we're going to join squares C and A. We're going to work into the first chain. This is the chain that's already been worked into. We're going to work into that outer loop on square C and find that outer loop of that first chain on square A. Going over the column and into this first chain. And now work into the second chain. You can see it's quite small, but still work into it. And now resume working into the corresponding stitches. When we get to the 2 chain stitches, we're going to work into the first chain only of square C and the first chain only of square A. Working into the first chain of square C and the first chain of square A. And to finish the row, we're going to fasten off and pull the tail through the loop that was on our hook. Now we're going to start row 2. As you can see right here, we have the front of our bag facing us, but we want to start on the back. So let's flip our bag over. Now the back of the bag is facing us. We are going to join squares L and F. So let's rotate our work so that those 2 squares are facing us. And we're going to start right here and work all the way down the back. So once again, we're going to make a slip knot and place it on our hook. Square L is on our right, square F is on our left. So we're going to take square L, which we're going to take this folded corner here and find the second of 2 chain stitches. So this is the first stitch that we'll work into, and then the second chain of the square on our left. So find that second chain and the second chain. And now work into the corresponding stitches all the way up. I'm at the chain stitches now. We're going to work into the first chain only of these 2 squares. Skip the second chain, skip the join line, and then working into the next 2 squares, working into the first chain and the first chain, and then the second chain and the second chain. And then work into the corresponding stitches. I'm almost finished joining square I and H. We're going to do the exact same thing we just did. We're only going to work into the first chain and the first chain. Skip the next chain, skip the join line, and then work into the first chain of the next square and the first chain of the next square. And also work into the second chain and the second chain. And now just work into the corresponding stitches. These are squares M and J. These are our last 2 squares along the back. I'm at the chains, and now I'm going to work into the first chain only and the first chain only. Now we're going to flip our bag over. Now the front of our bag is facing us, and we're continuing working on square M. We're going to continue right where we left off and work into the second chain and work into the second chain of square D. Now resume working into the corresponding stitches. Now we're going to do the same thing we've done at the other intersections. Work into the first chain only. Skip the next chain, skip the join line, and work into the first chain of the next square and the first chain of the next square. Work into the second chain, the square on our right, and the second chain, the square on our left. And we're going to work into the corresponding stitches. To finish joining squares E and C, once again work into the first chain only, skip over the join line, and then to join squares L and B, you're going to work into the first chain and the second chain, and then into each corresponding stitch. At the very end of joining squares L and B, only work into the first chain and the first chain. And that concludes row 2. Fasten off and pull the tail through. And now your squares are all joined. We are not going to weave in our loose ends. I'm going to tuck mine into the bag so they're not all over the place. We're going to keep these around until we add the bag border, because we can use these to fix any unwanted gaps between these join lines and the bag border. Now we are going to add the bag border and the strap. For all of the border and strap, use color A. I used white, and use an H hook. As you can see here, the front of my bag is facing up. We're going to be attaching a new strand of yarn to the front of the bag in this stitch right here. This is the top right square on the front of the bag, and in the corner here there's 2 chain stitches, one that's already been worked in and one that hasn't been worked in. Then find the first stitch to the left of those 2 chain stitches. Here's this first stitch, and we're going to attach a new strand of yarn to the top of this first stitch through both loops, and we'll be attaching our yarn with a slip stitch. So insert your hook into the top of that stitch, place a new strand of yarn on your hook and pull it through the stitch, and then make a slip stitch. Working into the same stitch, we're going to make a single crochet stitch. It's okay if it's a little loose. It'll get tightened up when we weave in our ends. Now place a stitch marker in the top of that single crochet stitch that we just made. Next, we're going to single crochet, just make 1 single crochet in each stitch until we get to the peak. At the peak, you will see 2 chain stitches, and we are not going to be working into those chain stitches. So our last stitch will be right here, which is the last stitch, the top of the last stitch. So simply make a single crochet stitch in each stitch until the peak, or those 2 chain stitches. I've just single crocheted all the way up to the first peak. Now I'm at the chain 2 space. We're not going to work into the chain stitches. Into the chain 2 space, we're going to make 3 single crochet stitches into the same space. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to make a single crochet stitch in each of the stitches until we get to the first valley. And the valley is this V between squares. So our next stitch here can be a little tight because it's right next to that chain 2 space. But here's the stitch. It's the top of the first stitch here. Make a single crochet stitch into that and make a single crochet stitch into each stitch until we get to the valley. I'm almost finished single crocheting all the way until the valley. I have 1 more stitch to work into. It's the top of this last stitch here. So I'm going to make my last single crochet stitch into that stitch. And now we're going to do a special stitch. For this special stitch, we're going to be working into this chain 2 space, this chain 2 space, and this chain 2 space. We're not going to be working into any chains. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to insert our hook into the first chain 2 space. Now I'm going to insert my hook into this chain 2 space. I haven't yarned over, I haven't done anything other than insert my hook into 2 chain 2 spaces at this point. Now we're going to insert our hook into the next chain 2 space. Again, we're not yarning over. All I'm doing is inserting my hook into the next chain 2 space. So I have my hook now through all 3 chain 2 spaces. Now I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to pull the yarn through all 3 chain 2 spaces. Let's go slowly. I've yarned over. I'm going to pull the yarn through the last chain 2 space, the middle chain 2 space, and the first chain 2 space. I now have 2 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull that yarn through the 2 loops on my hook. And we've just done a special single crochet 3 together. Now we're going to begin the repeat portion of the round. This is what we're going to be repeating all the way around our bag. The first step is to single crochet in each stitch until the next peak. This is the next peak. There are 2 chain stitches for the next peak. We're not going to work into those chain stitches. So right now, let's just single crochet in each stitch up until the peak. I'm going to show you where the first stitch we're going to work into because it's gotten a little tight after that special stitch. Here's the first stitch, here's the top of it. And we're going to single crochet normally in both loops into the top of that first stitch and then in each stitch until we get to this last stitch here. And into the last stitch into the top of that will make our last single crochet stitch. So working into the first stitch and then single crochet until the peak. I've just made a single crochet in the top of this last stitch. Next, we're going to work into this chain 2 space, but our stitch marker is in the way. So let's remove the stitch marker, but keep it somewhere on the front. So I'm just going to take it out and put it right here. However, when you come up to that stitch marker again, you might need to keep replacing it, but we want to identify which side is the front. So just always keep replacing it. It's the only purpose of this stitch marker at this point is just to tell us which side is the front. The next set of instructions in this repeat is to make 3 single crochet stitches into this chain 2 space. So don't work into the 2 chains, just working into the space. Make 3 single crochet stitches all in the same space. Next, we are going to single crochet in each stitch until the next valley. Now this valley's folded over, but we're still treating it as a valley because it still is a V. The first place that you'll single crochet into is the top of this stitch, and it's a little tight, but work into the top of that stitch and then in each stitch until you get to the valley. Your last stitch will be this last stitch here. Into the top of that will be your last single crochet stitch because then you'll be coming up on the chains and the chain 2 space. I've just single crocheted until the valley. So once again, we're going to be making a special single crochet 3 together in the first chain 2 space, in the second chain 2 space, and into the third chain 2 space. Insert your hook into the first chain 2 space. Don't yarn over, just insert your hook into the second chain 2 space. Don't yarn over, insert your hook into the third chain 2 space. Now yarn over and pull that yarn through all 3 chain 2 spaces. And it's okay to help it along. Now you have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull that yarn through both loops. Those are the steps that you're going to repeat all the way around the bag. When you are back to the first stitch made in the round, the stitch with the stitch marker, come back to the video and we'll finish the round together. I've just finished repeating that all the way around. My last stitch here was the special single crochet 3 together. And now I am back to the first stitch made in the round, the stitch with the stitch marker. We're going to remove this marker and make a single crochet stitch into the top of this stitch. So working into the top of that first single crochet stitch into both loops, not the slip stitch that we made when we attach the yarn, but into the single crochet stitch. Into that, make a single crochet stitch. And that completes round 1. Now we're going to start round 2. For this pattern, we are never going to turn, and we're also not going to make any chains when we begin a round. The first step in this round is to make a single crochet stitch in the next stitch. Working into this next stitch, make a single crochet. Now we're going to place a stitch marker into the top of that single crochet stitch that we just made. Now we're going to begin the repeat portion of the round. The first part of our repeat is to single crochet in each stitch until the peak. The peak in this round are the 3 single crochet stitches that we made in the chain 2 space in the previous round. So until we get there, we're not going to work into those 3 stitches. Just start by single crocheting in each stitch until the first of 3 single crochet stitches made in the peak from the previous round. I'm now at the peak. I'm at the 3 single crochet stitches made into the chain 2 space, and we're going to work into the first 2 of those 3 stitches. Into the first 2, we're going to make 1 single crochet stitch in the first one and 1 single crochet stitch into the second one. We are not going to work into the 3rd single crochet stitch. So working in the first, make 1 single crochet stitch, and working into the second or the middle single crochet stitch from the previous round, make 1 single crochet stitch. Now we're going to make our strap, and we're going to make a number of chains which will create the strap. A quick note that everything in this part of the tutorial is exactly the same as it is for the Snowflake Granny Square Bag. The pattern says to chain 80, which creates a strap that is approximately 26 inches long. You can adjust the size of the strap by making any number of chains. There's no specific multiple required. I will note that the yarn that I'm using for this bag is quite thick compared to other size 4 yarns, and I found making 80 chains with this bag pattern created a longer strap than using a different size 4 yarn. So you may need to experiment with the number of chains that you would like, but for this bag pattern, I'll be chaining 80. So starting right where we ended, we're just going to start making our chains. You go ahead and chain 80 or your desired number of chains. There's no multiple required. With your chains now made, we are going to attach the strap to the 3rd of 3 single crochet stitches made in the chain 2 space in the previous round. So here's the first one, here's the middle one, and here's the 3rd. We are going to attach the strap by making a single crochet stitch into this 3rd stitch from the peak. And this is, as you can see here, it's in the next square. One thing you want to be careful of is to make sure your chain stitches aren't twisted before you attach the strap to the bag. So I've made sure my chains are not twisted. I'm going to insert my hook into the 3rd of 3 single crochet stitches, yarn over, pull that yarn through, 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, and bring that yarn through both loops. Now we're simply going to single crochet in each stitch until the valley. The valley is the 3 stitches that are closest to the valley. So you can easily see which stitch is right in between the 2 squares here. That would be my middle valley stitch. And here's the first valley stitch, here's the middle valley stitch, and here's the last valley stitch. So these 3 stitches are the valley stitches. So we will not be working into those right now as we single crochet in each stitch until the valley. So once you get to these 3 valley stitches, and you can just pick which stitches are the 3 stitches closest to the valley, but we're not going to single crochet into those. We're just going to single crochet in each stitch until those 3 valley stitches. So right after attaching the strap, you just go right into making single crochet stitches until those 3 valley stitches. I've just single crocheted until the 3 valley stitches. And at these 3 valley stitches, we are going to do a special stitch called an invisible single crochet 3 together. And we're going to be working into the front loops only of these 3 valley stitches. The front loop only is the loop closest to us. We're going to be working into the front loop only of the first stitch, the middle stitch, and the third stitch. Here's how we do an invisible single crochet 3 together. Insert our hook into the front loop only of this first valley stitch. We're not going to yarn over. We're going to insert this hook into the next stitch, the middle of the 3 valley stitches, into the front loop only. Next, we'll insert our hook into the front loop only of the 3rd valley stitch. Now we're going to yarn over and pull that yarn through 3 loops on our hook. I have 2 loops left on my hook, yarn over and pull the yarn through the 2 remaining loops. And there's our invisible single crochet 3 together. Those are the steps that you're going to be repeating all the way around. Essentially, you're going to do exactly what we just did on the front of the bag, on the back of the bag. Repeating these steps all the way around creates the second strap. Your last step in repeating those instructions will be to make an invisible single crochet 3 together over these 3 valley stitches, and then you'll be arriving back at the first stitch made in the round, the stitch with the stitch marker. Come back to the video and we'll finish the round together. I've just finished working all the way around. I'm back at the first stitch made in the round. We're now going to remove this marker and single crochet in that stitch. So working into this stitch, make a single crochet stitch. That completes round 2. Now we're going to start round 3. Remember, we never turn and we don't make any chains. We're going to work into the very next stitch and make a single crochet stitch. Now we're going to place a stitch marker in the top of that stitch we just made. Now we're going to begin the repeat portion of the round. Here's what we'll be repeating. We're going to single crochet in each stitch until the strap. The strap is the 80 chains, or whatever number of chains you made for the strap. And you can see the difference here. This is where the chains start, and here's my last stitch before those chain stitches. So we're just going to single crochet in each stitch until you get to your first chain stitch. I'm almost at my first chain stitch. I'm going to make one more single crochet in the last stitch before the strap. Now we're going to work into each chain, but we're going to work into the back ridge loops, which are these bumps along the back. So simply rotate your chain towards you and work into the first bump along the back by inserting your hook and then making a regular single crochet stitch. However, when we make our single crochet stitches into each of these back ridge loops, we're going to make our single crochet stitches very loosely. So working into the first chain, rotate your chain, find that back bump, insert your hook into it, and single crochet very loosely. Working into the next back ridge loop, insert your hook and single crochet very loosely. So you go ahead and do this in each back ridge loop all the way across your strap. As you're nearing the end of your strap, come back to the video and we'll finish doing that together. I'm almost finished making single crochet stitches into each chain. I have one chain left to work into. So working into the last chain, into the back ridge loop, single crochet loosely. Now we're going to single crochet in each stitch until the next valley. I wanted to point out this first single crochet stitch because with the chain attached, it can be a little tricky to see. Here's the top of that stitch, so I'm just working in normally under both loops And now we can go back just to making regular single crochet stitches. They don't need to be very loose. So our last single crochet stitch before the valley is this stitch right here. Now that we're at the valley, we're going to make an invisible single crochet 3 together by working into the first valley stitch, the middle valley stitch, and the last valley stitch. Once again, insert your hook under the front loop only of that first stitch, then insert your hook into the front loop only of the middle stitch, and then insert your hook into the front loop only of the last valley stitch. Now yarn over, bringing that yarn through only 3 loops on your hook. 2 loops left, yarn over and bring that yarn through both remaining loops. Those are the steps that you're going to repeat all the way around. When you're back at the first stitch made in the round, come back to the video and we'll finish the round together. I've just worked all the way around. I'm now back at the first stitch made. We're going to remove this stitch marker and work into this stitch. So working into this stitch, we're going to single crochet. And that completes round 3. Now we're going to start round 4. And when we get to round 5, we're going to be repeating the exact same thing that we do in this round. The first step is to single crochet in the next stitch. Now we're going to place our stitch marker in the top of that stitch. Now we're going to begin the repeat portion of the round. The first step is to single crochet in each stitch until the strap. If you can see here, here is my first single crochet stitch that I made in the strap, which means this is the last single crochet stitch that's part of the bag border. So we're going to single crochet up until this stitch right here. I am now at the strap. We are now going to switch and make waistcoat single crochet stitches in each stitch on the strap. The only difference between a regular single crochet stitch and a waistcoat single crochet stitch is where we insert our hook. Normally when we make single crochet stitches, we insert our hook under the top 2 loops. Each single crochet stitch that we made in the previous round is a V shape. We're going to insert our hook in the middle of this V. We're going to insert our hook right in between the legs of the post and insert our hook right in here. By doing this, it's going to help our strap stretch less and curl less. If you make regular single crochet stitches all the way through the strap, I found it really curled and I found it quite stretchy. So we don't want our strap to stretch too much, and this is going to help. So instead of working under the top of 2 loops, we're going to insert our hook right in between the legs of the post in the middle of the V, and then single crochet as we normally would. It's going to be quite tight, and that's why we wanted to single crochet very loosely in the previous round. So working into the very first stitch of the strap, insert your hook into the middle of the V, just like that. Yarn over, pull the yarn through, and it can be tight. 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull the yarn through both loops. So we finish it just like a regular single crochet stitch, and it looks just like a regular single crochet stitch, but the placement of the stitch is different. We're going to be doing this in each stitch across the strap. Here's the next stitch, here's the V. We're going to insert our hook into the middle of the V. And even when I single crocheted loosely, I still found it very tight. Take your time and single crochet. I found it helped to stretch out my work a little bit so I can really differentiate the stitches. And you're going to keep doing this all the way across the strap. I'm almost finished the strap. I have one more stitch to make a waistcoat single crochet stitch into before I get to the bag border. This can be hard to tell which stitch is part of the strap and which stitch is part of the bag border, and honestly, don't worry too much about it. You don't want to go too far into the bag border doing waistcoat stitches, but it's also okay if it's not exactly the right stitch that you start the bag border on. So just like we have been working into the middle of the V, I'm going to make my last waistcoat single crochet stitch into that stitch. Now that I'm back at the bag border, we're going to resume making regular single crochet stitches until the 3 valley stitches. This just means to resume working under the top loops, just like we normally make regular single crochet stitches all the way until the valley. Here's my first stitch after my last waistcoat stitch, and just make a regular single crochet stitch, and then single crochet regularly until the 3 valley stitches. I'm now at the 3 valley stitches, so we're going to do our invisible single crochet 3 together. Just a reminder, you're only working in the front loops only. And that's what you're going to be repeating all the way around. When you're back at the first stitch made, come back to the video. I am now back to the first stitch made. We're going to remove this stitch marker, but keeping note of where that stitch marker was, and single crochet into that stitch. That completes round 4. For round 5, you're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to repeat all the instructions from round 4. I'm right at the end of round 5, which is repeating round 4. So I'm at that first stitch made in the round. I'm removing the marker and single crocheting in that stitch. This is now the end of round 5. To finish the round, you can either make a regular slip stitch to join, just like when we join the final round of the squares, and then fasten off. Or you can use the invisible join technique. Here's how to do that. We're going to remove our hook from the stitch, and we're going to cut the yarn that's attached to the skein, leaving about an 8-inch tail. Now we're going to pull the tail through the stitch and put that tail through our yarn needle. If you've made an invisible join before, you normally work into the first stitch. I found for this bag, it was actually better to work into the second stitch. So not the first stitch, but into the second stitch. So I'm going to skip the next stitch, working into the next stitch, go through both loops, pull the yarn through. Now we're going to work into the last stitch made in the round, but we're only going to insert our hook into the back loop only. We're going to insert our hook into the back loop and this loop here that's parallel to the back loop. So going into the back loop and then finding this parallel loop, which is a little small, and then pulling our yarn all the way through. Don't pull your yarn too tight. We want it to resemble a stitch. And now we weave in our tail into the back of our work. We want to hide the tail by working into the back of stitches, but also ensuring that it's nice and secure. So change directions, and you can do this a few times until it's nice and secure. Once it's secure, cut your remaining yarn. And now we have this beautiful invisible join. Now we're going to be doing the front inside of the bag border and strap. For this front inside section, we want to make sure that the front of our bag is facing us. So we're attaching our yarn under the strap into the third of 3 single crochet stitches made in the chain 2 space. So we'll be inserting our hook into this third single crochet stitch and joining or attaching our yarn with a slip stitch. So insert your hook Into that stitch, place a new strand of yarn on your hook and pull it through and make a slip stitch. It's going to be loose, but it'll tighten up once you weave in your loose ends. Into this same stitch, we're going to single crochet. Now we're going to place a stitch marker into that stitch. Now we're going to single crochet in each stitch until the 3 valley stitches. At the valley, we'll do our invisible single crochet 3 together. So working into the front loops only. Now we're going to single crochet in each stitch until the strap. You can remove your stitch marker, but place it somewhere else on the front. I'm going to place mine around the post of this stitch here. Now single crochet all the way into the strap. As you approach the strap, it can be tricky to see which are stitches. So let's take a look here. I've just single crocheted in the first of 3 single crochet stitches made in the chain 2 space. So I have 1 more single crochet stitch to work into before I get to the strap. If you take a closer look, these are actually the sides of stitches here, and then our first chain that we'll be working into is right here. So I'm going to make my last single crochet stitch before the strap. When we get to the strap, we're going to be working into both loops of each chain stitch all across the strap. So we'll insert our hook under both loops and we're going to single crochet, but we're going to single crochet very, very loosely. So here's my last single crochet stitch from the bag border. Now I'm going to insert my hook under both loops of the first chain stitch and single crochet loosely. There may be a small gap here, but we can use the tails that we've saved from joining to fix any gaps that you find unsightly. So working into each chain stitch under both loops, single crochet loosely. And do this all the way across the strap and come back to the video when you're back at the bag border. I'm now at the end of the strap, and the next step is to remove this marker and single crochet in the top of this stitch. So working in the top of that first stitch, single crochet. Again, there might be a little gap here, but we can fix that with our tails. Now we're going to put the stitch marker into that stitch that we just made. Now we're going to start round 2. We are going to single crochet into each stitch until the 3 valley stitches. At these 3 valley stitches, we'll do our invisible single crochet 3 together. Now we're going to single crochet in each stitch until we get to the strap. I'm almost at the strap, just wanted to show you the difference between the stitches on the bag border and those on the strap. So I have 2 stitches left before my first stitch on the strap. And once again, there's lots of flexibility here. If you don't work into the exact right stitch, which is the first stitch on the strap, it's absolutely okay if this was your first stitch on the strap. The bag's still gonna look beautiful. I'm going to use this as my first stitch on the strap, and we are going to switch to making waistcoat single crochet stitches into each stitch all the way across the strap. So not working into the top loops, but in the middle of the V, single crochet. And do this in each stitch until you're back at the bag border. I'm almost finished making waistcoat single crochet stitches. I have 2 more stitches to work into. Just wanted to show you what that looks like. So I'll work into those last 2 stitches, making waistcoat single crochet stitches. We're going to remove this marker and work into that stitch. And into this stitch, we're going to make a regular single crochet stitch by inserting our hook under the top 2 loops. Working into that stitch, just make a regular single crochet stitch. Now we're going to put our stitch marker into the top of that stitch we just made. For round 3, we're going to be repeating almost the exact same steps that we just did in round 2. The only difference between the 2 rounds is what happens when we get back to the stitch with the stitch marker. Otherwise, the instructions are exactly the same. Single crochet in each stitch until the 3 valley stitches. Make your invisible single crochet 3 together in those 3 valley stitches. Single crochet in each stitch until the strap. Our last regular single crochet stitch will be the top of this stitch here. And then we're going to switch to making waistcoat single crochet stitches in each stitch across the strap. So your last single crochet stitch here, then go right into waistcoat single crochet stitches all across the strap, and then come back to the video. I'm almost finished the strap here, and you can really see now that we have a beautiful strap that's even on both sides. It doesn't stretch too much, and it lays flat. It doesn't curl. And here's my last stitch on the strap. Now we're going to remove that stitch marker, and into that stitch we are going to make a regular single crochet stitch. So insert your hook under the top 2 loops of that stitch and single crochet. We are not going to put our stitch marker back into that stitch. We're going to go right into round 4. For round 4, we're going to make regular single crochet stitches all the way until the 3 valley stitches. Now we're going to make our invisible single crochet 3 together over the 3 valley stitches. Now we're going to single crochet in each stitch until the strap. It can be tricky to tell which is the first stitch of the strap, and honestly, it's okay if you don't have the exact right stitch, but to show you mine, here is my first stitch of the strap. You can see this stitch goes into the V of the stitch below. So this is my first strap stitch. So right here will be the last single crochet stitch that I work into. So I'm going to single crochet all the way into the top of this stitch right here. So I've just finished making my last single crochet stitch. We are going to leave the rest of the stitches in the round unworked. You can either make a regular slip stitch to join and then fasten off, or as I'll show in this video, you can use the invisible join technique. We're going to finish right here. So remove our hook, cut the yarn that's attached to the skein, pull that tail through the stitch, put our yarn through our yarn needle, and once again, I'm not going to work into the next stitch. I'm going to work into the following stitch, inserting my needle through both loops, pulling the yarn through, and then going back to that last stitch that we made, working in the back loop only and into the loop that's parallel, pulling my yarn needle through. And now I'm going to weave this end through the backs of stitches and going in the opposite direction to make sure it's nice and secure. Once it's nice and secure, you can cut any remaining yarn. And that concludes the front inside of the bag border and strap. Now we're going to flip the bag over. As you can see, this is the front of the bag. We're going to flip it over so the back of the bag is now facing us. And you're going to repeat the exact same thing that we did for the front inside, but this time on the back of the bag. However, the instructions are exactly the same. You'll attach your yarn right here and follow all of those rounds right up until that invisible join that we did to finish the front inside. You'll do that on the back inside. After finishing the back inside, the last step is to weave in all your loose ends. And you can use these tails to fix any gaps. So you see there's a bit of a gap right here. If you want, you could weave this tail around these stitches just to close up that gap. And also, if you see there's any gaps where the ends of your join lines are, you can use the tails from those join lines to make them more cohesive and attached. After weaving in all of your loose ends, you'll now have a brand new Snowflake Granny Square Bag. That concludes this video tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy making this bag. I'd love to see your finished bags. I am here if you have any questions or if there's anything at all I can do to help. Thank you again and have a wonderful day.